by Clementine Zinner. She's doing a clay therapy workshop. It's 2 days. It's only $60, and we need a few more people to sign up to run the class. So we're hoping that one runs in addition to our talk theme. And we have luau tickets available for 2 more weeks, and then they're cut-off deadline. So the luau's to raise money for the building project. And there's going to be dancing fire guy from like I'm really impressed by the fire dancer, so I'm going. All right, without further ado, Judy.
All right, don't let me fall. Hi. She did have to convince me to do this because I was worried that art therapy is a unique discipline, and I didn't want anything to happen in my audience that a therapist might need to handle because I am retired, and it elicits all kinds of things. So I'm giving you an introduction. I didn't do it on a PowerPoint and or a slide show, although they offered, supposed to be close to this, because art therapy is not that kind of discipline. It's very loose. I am a certified, I have a certificate in art therapy to use in my toolbox as an art therapist. But a real art therapist has a master's and or PhD in art therapy, and they function as an art therapist all the time. I did not do that. I have a master's in social work, and my area of concentration was therapy, and that's what I did for over 35 years in places in my own private practice and also for the Willow Valley Center for Wellness and the Winding Waters Medical Clinic. So I'm going to tell you what I did and how it is set up, and I want you to ask me questions. We have some people in this audience right now. I'm going to introduce you right now. I hope that's okay. Lynn, I think you live in Wallowa still, right?
I do.
Was a practicing therapist for years, but she just told me she did the first
I was the first art therapist at Fairfax Psychiatric Hospital.
the first art therapist at Fairfax Psychiatric Hospital. There are some people in here like Josie, who has, I'm sure, did art therapy with some of your clients. This particular medium can be used with all forms of mental health problems. Okay, here we go. What is it? Again, it's a distinct discipline in mental health treatment that helps individuals all ages, truly, truly great with children, but even my oldest might have been 95, maybe 97. And groups express themselves without words, so you don't have to say anything. And especially for some things like post-traumatic stress disorder, you don't want to talk about it or you can't talk about it. And so, am I okay with the mic, DJ? You do something with your hands or your feet or a paintbrush in your mouth that helps you express yourself. It involves the use of various creative tools to help people better understand their feelings and behaviors. Those words are scary, especially for teenagers. No, I'm not doing it. I don't care. Okay, well, you don't have to do it. I just wondered if you might want to. Art therapy is different from making art. It is not what is happening in this room right now. These pieces are wonderful, but there was a goal involved in people making their pieces. No artistic talent is necessary. None. You don't have to be able to do anything. You might think you have to have some talent, because most people, and I have read this several times, I'm sure some of you have, I think it's 4th grade, most people don't want to do art anymore. They think they can't do art, or they're terrible at art. And maybe that's true for you, but most of the time it is only because we compare ourselves with other people. And Maury Moskovitz, in my case, was so good that I didn't want to draw in the same class with him because he could do it. The piece produced by an art therapy client is not about the artistic value of the work. An art product is not the goal. It is about using artistic tools to better understand ourselves. The theory is, and it has been, many people have been using this forever. I have somewhere in here about prehistoric art on the walls, in caves. What were they trying to tell us? I don't know, but something was happening even when people were not verbal. We subconsciously project, and I think this is true. Now, you can disagree with me, and the research shows, onto paper or another art medium our individual personality, including our many aspects. So, I believe this with there's not one person in this room, I am sure, that would make exactly the same drawing if I asked you to draw something. So I'm going to give you a little example of a drawing I did that I would never use in therapy because I'm not trained in the house tree person drawing. You have to be extremely well trained and have a master's in the interpretation of this drawing. The direction is simple, draw a house tree person. But how it's interpreted by a therapist that knows what they're doing is very different from what I would do. Because I'm not trained in this, and that is a very important thing. So when you look at this drawing, who wants to say what they notice? Yes, please.
The first thing I noticed was the sun in the upper left-hand corner.
And what would that mean to you?
When it's right over the person,
Mm-hmm.
that means that there's a positive relationship between that person and life. That they feel like they're doing okay, the sun is shining on them. And then I could,
She could go on.
Yeah.
Now,
Would you repeat that? Yeah.
Oh.
You just-
what Lynn said is and she probably has training in this. I have some training, but I am not an expert. So I don't use it because it really is very serious for people that know how to do it. When the sun is shining over the person, it means they have a happy disposition
yes,
and
a happy outlook. They
how-
feel good in life.
right. Now, I drew the sun over the person because there was room for the sun. Not because I was thinking, happy person. I wasn't. I was trying to make something that you could see that might happen in art therapy. Not with me. I would be much looser. Rarely did I ask people to draw something like this. Robin, what would you see if you looked at this?
I would see kind of a happy home, happy person, and just an angry tree.
Robin sees an angry tree. I see a scary tree. Now, I am sure that there would be an interpretation of this tree that is not scary. But in my mind, I went, whew, maybe I should rip this up and put another kind of tree, because that's how I am. These windows in this particular illustration can sometimes have a bar across them. I like to put bars on my windows because I feel like the window is better prepared, or I did a better job. But in the art therapy world, they might say, you don't want someone to know an aspect of yourself. Now, I am not saying that is exactly true. I am saying so you get the sense of what happens in art therapy when people do a drawing. My drawings would be much, much different, and I'm going to give you examples. So again, project our personality. That was me projecting my personality onto that. Therapy tools, pencils. In my training, and I have had lots of art therapy training, pencils are the safest. You don't get real deep into your unconscious with pencils. And part of it is that, and I've been trained, that your hand is here, and there's a pencil to the piece. Colored pencils, crayons, markers, drawing with specific requests, like the house tree person. Free drawing or even scribbling. Lots of people, I would say, just scribble something. It's amazing if I asked you all to scribble right now what you would do. Some people go, some people would make something because that's how we are. Painting goes deeper. Finger painting, much deeper. Collage, clay. Where's Ariana? Ariana, I'm real interested to know what will happen on Saturday with clay. That is a very deep form of therapy, especially when you add water to the clay. Now I know there's lots of clay that you don't add water to anymore, oil-based. But once you start getting your hands in something, something happens inside us.
You don't want to use it with conduct disordered kids.
Good point.
It's
Although,
not a very good medium for that group of children.
thank you. I will tell you that fast. One time I went to an art therapy class and we used clay, and I created and I shared with some friends. They said that the prompt was, make a problem that's going on in your life right now. And at that time, we were raising our son Basu, who is so much better now, but during his adolescence, he and I had lots of conflict. So I made this like per mother with a big head, and I made this little boy with a small head, and it was a blob really, out of clay. And the therapist came over and said, so what was the problem then? And I said, well, we fight or something. And then she said, and I didn't do this very often, why don't we just take the head off the little one, put it on the big one, and put your head over here, because this is not your problem. And I was like, it helped me. It helped me to be thinking I didn't have to solve everything in the entire world, that some of it was his job. Making dolls or puppets. Many, many times I have done that. And it's really, really fun. Without realizing it, even the simplest drawing or scribble can shed light on the emotions, intelligence, and even our self-esteem. If you draw a house and you are someone who has some developmental disabilities, your house is not going to be quite as straight as that. There have been kids I've worked with that can't even really draw a straight line, but I wouldn't have known it until I asked them to draw a house, or let's draw something. A little boy I had couldn't really make a letter for his first name, and he was 7. And so I didn't know, and he started going like this to make, I'd say, a T, and it gave me a clue on how he was developmentally functioning. Most 7-year-olds should be able to print their name. The art created in art therapy, or I think somebody brought up, you can do this by yourself, but it's not really considered art therapy unless you have an art therapist, and I will share, a medium and a client. That is real art therapy. You have an art therapy room. It says on your door, art therapist. That was never on my door. But I did do it often, especially with kids. We all can do it at home. Many people that are creative have a therapeutic response, happiness response, when they're quilting, when they're building something, not your picnic table, That is not a, she's having trouble with her picnic table. Anyway, even consciously, it is often very non-threatening, and it is non-threatening. To be honest with you, when you come in to a therapist's office, especially when you're little, 4, 5, 6 years old, you don't know what's going to happen in there. So I always would say, well, we have a few rules. I'm going to tell you my rules for me first. I will never hit you. I will never yell at you. And I am never going to touch you in your private parts. Now, oh, I'm so sorry. Can somebody know how to turn this off? Okay, I took a picture. I really am bad with this. And then I'd say to them, and no hitting Judy, and no throwing sand. Those are the 2 rules for them. And they would say, why? Well, I don't want to have bruises, and the sand will get all over, and I'll have to vacuum. And often they would try to throw sand. And I would say, what did I say? No throwing sand. Something about the way I said it would be helpful to them. And they would sometimes try to pick up the sand, sometimes throw it more, but it was a beginning of relationship for us to just set some boundaries. Sometimes the therapist asks questions when a piece is completed. Often the client simply tells about what they experienced. So I don't always say when someone finishes something. Say I would say to you, Anne, is there something bothering you today? Make something that represents it for you, not for me. And Anne might make it, or she might say no, she doesn't want to do that. It doesn't matter. And then I would say, tell me about your drawing or your piece. And you would tell me what it was. I would not tell you what I think it is or what it represents for me. Then I could say I've been trained in this several times, and this is a very amazing thing to do with somebody because, again, it's never going to be you. I might say, what might this green piece, I never usually say grass, because maybe it's not grass to them, to this up here. What would it say if it was using words? And it is amazing, no matter what age, what people will say. So happy you're here, or you're using too much water, or whatever comes to them. You do that back and forth a few times with people in the therapy room, and something else starts coming up for them without them knowing it that could be helpful to them, and you will have a few more tools. What do you notice when you look at your work? I would say. Nothing. So many times you will say that. And I'd go, all righty then. Does anything in your piece strike you as odd or surprising, or surprises you? Then I wait to see if something comes up. Is there something you might like to change? Do you think your feelings are unusual? Oh my goodness, that one can really create an amazing amount of talk. Yes, nobody feels like me. Nobody, there's nobody. Draw 2 faces. This is kind of hard, but it's something that we should think about. Representing how you look to others. Some might say your outside face, which I have on today, and how you feel inside right now. Right now, I feel numb because I'm doing this no matter what happens, so I can't even waste time on being too anxious. But then I might say, draw or use any art tool you want to express how you feel inside most of the time. Most of the time is very different from right now. Some people are happy all the time. Might be scared, might be extremely sad, might be very, very worried. Draw or some other medium to say what you like about yourself. Whoa, so we go have a blank paper on that one. What you dislike or hate about you. Is this making sense? Am I going on and on too much? Because if I was, I'd still keep going. So, in art therapy, as a mental health treatment model, and I mentioned this before, 3 things are present: the therapist, the client, no matter what the age, and the art medium. That does not really happen at all in making art. For instance, Mary's husband is a sculptor, Mary is a painter and art teacher, but you don't have to have a therapist there to do what you do. Yeah, she should. Mary definitely should, no. Clients usually come in with a concern, worry, or problem. So I have a little background when they come in because they say to me, I say, hi, da-da-da, and what brings you today? And they'll tell me, or they used to tell me, I'm worried about my da-da-da. Probably not da-da-da, something. Kids often don't even have the slightest idea why they're here. But I get that information from the parents first. So I have an idea before I do an assessment. Artists may create, this is about artists now, not art therapy, an amazing art piece, and I know there are artists in here, so you can correct me here, without wanting to solve a problem. They want to make something. They're inspired to do something, but they're not necessarily thinking, I'm going to figure out how to help my dad by making this particular piece. It could happen for them, but it isn't the goal, I believe, of just art. Both art creation and work done in art therapy are forms of meditation. I think that it's really very absorbing to make anything. And oftentimes, somebody in my office might spend the entire hour drawing one tiny little thing, and I would never interrupt them, because whatever is going on inside them is going on inside them. Art therapy is not a class. This is kind of a class. So this is not really art therapy. The therapist usually, this does happen when you shop at Holly Bobley and get this paper that's not strong. This therapy usually doesn't teach the client anything about using the medium. I don't teach them. Let's learn how to paint. Oh, let's learn. I don't teach them. I just have the things out and say, use whatever you feel like. What kind of talks to you today, or what? And so I would say something like that. The piece is not judged. Never, ever, ever does someone finish a piece of art and I say, bad, or that isn't good, or what is that? Never, ever would say that. I also don't say it's great. I do not say we're going to put that piece in the next famous art show, because it's not about that. This could also be true for art students or artists of all genres. There's many more forms of art besides those used in art therapy, and some art therapists use things like dance or there's so many. Pardon me? Theater. Thank you. It's a form of art, certainly. Literary artists, musical artists, painting, architectural kinds of art. But that isn't what happens in art therapy. Nevertheless, the piece produced is the goal, often inspired by this. The piece produced is the goal. Does that make sense? Okay, that's enough saying that 5,000 times. What kinds of problems or issues can art therapy help? Can help with lowering anxiety and reasons behind what triggers anxiety. So for instance, somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder or just more perfectionistic might think to themselves, a therapist would say, so use this medium to show me what it's like for you to feel anxious inside. And so I would make something. And then I might say, what triggers it? One time I worked with a woman who had to click the light switch a billion times. I think 414. And if she got lost at 382, she had to go back out and start again. So sometimes she could not move into the room because she's still clicking that thing. It meant something to her. So then I spent time, she drew about it, she worked on it, and then I asked her what she thought triggered it, and she had an explanation that I would never have thought of in a million years. And that was that dark rooms are never safe. So you have to make sure that the light is on. And then I would say, but it's daylight when you're clicking. I know, but you never can be too sure. You never can be too sure. So that's her answer. And if she gets soothing somehow from that and is able to only do 325 now, that is progress. She might come in and say to me, I'm still clicking, but it's less. Because she had something happen inside her. It assists with treatment of depression. I've seen it happen many times. Now, I'm not saying it's the cure for depression. There are many things. Exercise, the right food, maybe medicine, maybe psychiatric care. But art therapy can help with it, and I have seen it many times. Assist with treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. I would say, especially for kids, that was a big one, but there's a lot of that because people cannot talk about it. I have seen in my career many, many veterans, and they don't want to talk about this, but they came because they know something's not right, or their wife said, you have to go. You're da-da-da. And then they would start making something, and something might come up for them that they didn't or were never able to verbalize. And that would be a breakthrough for them. I would not know that was going to come out, but it would. Children, post-traumatic stress disorder for kids is big. They carry an amazing amount with them. And they can't talk about it. They don't even know what's happening. But they might be able to make something that would feel soothing to them. Even in dream work that I would do with kids, they would come in and say, I have this terrible nightmare, and in the nightmare there's this big tiger, and blah, 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 blah. And then I might say, how are you going to solve that? Well, I don't know. Well, if you drew something right now that could help a little bit, what would that be? And they would say, they'd start drawing. And then one boy made a big cage that he put the tiger in. Another person said, I moved from Africa, and made like a map or whatever else it was. I didn't expect these things, but they came out. And self-soothing is one of the biggest things in art therapy. Helps with the externalization and expression of thoughts and feelings to gain insights and to understand why we act the way we do. encourages introspection and self-awareness, very effective to help children express themselves without words. I probably used it. Well, Mary, you're a teacher of children's art. You know, they're telling us something every single time, whether there's a therapist present or not. And I don't know what you do, but I don't interpret it for them.
Everyone is extremely different in their own vision and their own story, and yeah, I just let them.
Thank you, Mary. That's true. Increases mindfulness. You know, some people hate that word, and you can, but I do think being mindful of the now, of how things are right this minute, very important, because we only have this 1 minute. We have this second. We don't know what's going to happen. So I love it as a tool to increase mindfulness. Art therapy is as one tool. This therapist, retired, when practicing, used art therapy with all ages. My youngest, I think, was 3, and you would think a 3-year-old, but they can do things. They make amazing things with clay or in the sand. I don't know if any of you are familiar with sand tray, but you have a room, I had millions, of little tiny things on shelves. Little horses, little dinosaurs, big dinosaurs, trees, rocks, flowers, people, all colors of people. And you ask the child or adults do it to create a world. Just put some stuff in there. It is amazing what people will put in the sand. One little boy, I remember clearly, poured water until it was real wet sand. Then he pushed all the sand to one corner and made a big castle. And then he took this tiniest boy child figure I had and stuck it on top of the castle. Now I am thinking, whoa, look at that. Then he took this big dinosaur and put it coming towards the castle. And then I said, oh, tell me about your, excuse me, I do have a cold. Tell me about your world. And he said, that dinosaur is me. I am mad. My mom and dad and ba. I would never have expected that. I thought he was the little one on top of the thing. But he wasn't. He was the dinosaur. Cancer patients. Patients of all kinds. Hospice patients. In my after-work job, I did hospice therapy in Wallowa County for 7 years. Now, truly there weren't that many hospice patients, so it's not like I was out till midnight every night, but it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. And oftentimes people in hospice wanted to make something rather than verbalize it. Sometimes they want to make something to give to their loved ones. I did a cancer support group at Wallowa Memorial Hospital and probably had 17 people in that group, some men and some women. We did oftentimes group art, where I just put a big piece of paper in the middle of the table, and then they would draw things on it, then add something to it. And the final product would be very meaningful for all of us, but they would tell me about it. Also in that cancer support group, at that time, Wallowa Memorial Hospital had a very innovative, I don't know what you would call her now, HR person, I don't know. But she decided that the hospital would have an art exhibit of things cancer patients and or people grieving would make. And we would hang it not to be judged, but for others to see how the expression of grief is in the world. Everyone in my group agreed to do it. My father had just died. I was grieving deeply, but I didn't want to say anything. And so I kept thinking about it and thought, I am going to make something to hang on, not to be judged, to help me if this process really works. So I found a big old clock on the front of a National Geographic, so probably was only this big instead. And I cut it out and stuck it in the middle of this paper. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I took, I don't know where I even found these, 2 palm, on Palm Sunday, palm branches, especially in the Catholic Church. My family grew up Catholic, and my father was very Catholic. It was meaningful to him. So I stuck those as the hands. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing that. Then I take all these pictures I have of my dad from the time he was a boy, through his army, marrying my mom, until I get over here on the clock, and that's when it gets so dull. And now I can hardly stand up. I want to stay doing this until midnight, till 5 days later. I'm so absorbed. When it was finished, it was very meaningful to me. It helped me grieve me, not as a therapist, as a person with lots of grief inside me. And I kept that, I hung it on the wall. There were no awards, but I did it with the rest of my group. And then I took it home, and when I moved, 8 months ago, I finally dismantled it and threw it away. Because sometimes I would have it under a bed, and I would pull it out just to look at it and think about my dad and what that was like for me to lose him 35 years ago. So, and here we go to the final page. Art has been a form of communication and release since prehistoric times. Edith Kramer, credited as being the founder of art therapy in about 1940. People were doing it way before that. Freud actually believed in it. It emerged as college degree programs about the same time, mostly after World War II though, when there were so many soldiers and so many families. Thank you. Lots of research on its positive contribution to healing. And Nance, I think maybe you asked me this question. Somebody asked me about how do we know this is helpful? Is there any kind of brain research? I am not versed in all the research around it, but there's been tons. What I do know is that there are neurological benefits from meditation, from calming, and same thing is true for art therapy, and there's been many, many people that have tested it, not me. Even an MRI can see when your brain is getting calmer. And it gets calmer. I don't know if my brain got calmer when I was making that thing for my father, but I was, about my father, so absorbed. So I don't know if you have any questions. I am welcoming them. I don't even have the slightest idea what time it is, but if there is time, I would read you this tiny little thing that I read for Fish Trap in October. Not at the time thinking it was about art therapy, but it is totally about art therapy. And I think it would be a good example in terms of how you don't need to know what you're doing in order for it to be helpful. So what time is it?
It's 12:40, you have time, and we have the little papers at the front.
I do have one little thing I'd love you to do. So why don't I'll read a part of this. I shortened it way. But some of you were there, many of you, we don't have to hear this again. But I call it Give Sorrow Words, only because there were no words involved in this, but at the end. Sometimes we can't say what's wrong until we use some form of activity to bring the words up or out. I, like you, worked in a psychiatric hospital in Pennsylvania on a ward with all these teenage, mostly heroin, but some meth addicts too. Darling boys, mean as hell. But they like to write. And so sometimes writing would be a form of therapy for them. And a lot of times their writing would be something like, fuck, and fuck, over and over. And I would be shocked. But that's what they wanted to do. So he was 5 and hid behind his mom's right leg. Black hair, dark eyes, and skin the color of an acorn shell. His mother, she introduced herself as Carolina, could not have been more than 25. She had come with her boy, Mateo, to the temporary Red Cross station across the Hudson River from where great plumes of taupe-colored smoke and ash still darkened the skies of New York City. This is after 9/11, when I went with a mental health team from the Northwest to do post-traumatic stress disorder evaluations. But why was she here, I asked myself. The woman just stood there smiling. Eventually, she told me her worry was that Mateo, her son, refused to go to school. He was such a good student, top of his class. He loved school. School is important. But now he hit, he kicked, he threw himself on the floor when the bus came. No one could drag him to school, not even in his Superman pajamas. So I asked Carolina how long ago it was that Mateo went to school with Joy. She answered swiftly, before the Twin Towers went down. This was just maybe a week and a half after. 2, could have been 2. And I asked, did anyone in your family get hurt in the disaster? Oh no, Carolina said, but I did work in the hotel connecting the towers, and the hotel was damaged too. She shyly shared that she was on duty in the hotel during the attack, and she was buried under the hotel's front desk when firemen and policemen started bringing in the bodies of the dead. They were placed side by side in our lobby, she said. She added that she could not get out from under the debris, but she could see everything. Because of my training as a therapist, I began to recognize the necessary denial lodged in Carolina's possible post-traumatic stress disorder. But this visit was about Mateo, so I didn't go there to address anything with her. She brought her son in, that was the goal. I softly asked, when did someone realize you were under the desk and free you? Mateo's eyes were wide and staring. I was watching him the whole entire time because his mom is giving me the information that I am going to need to know what's going on for him and why he won't go to school. A simple thing. Then I asked, how were things when... No, I softly asked, when did someone free you? Oh, about 17 hours later. But I was pulled out without a scratch and driven right home. Then I asked, how were things when you got home? Well, by then it was very early the next morning and I expected everyone to be asleep. But Mateo and my husband had their eyes glued to the television. Even ate some nachos in front of it. I remember her saying that. No real dinner. You know, those news channels had everything about the Twin Towers on TV, even people jumping from those top floors. Now this little boy is watching this. So Mom left Mateo with me in the Red Cross cubicle for grief therapy and PTSD evaluations. He begged her not to go. But she showed him where she would be sitting outside the door and promised they would get ice cream after the two of us had so much fun. Mateo did not talk when she shut the door. He would not look at me. Nevertheless, I managed to tempt him with some paper and crayons in all sorts of waxy colors. At first, he just looked down and fingered the round crayons. Now, here is Miss Chatty Cathy right in front of you. Talks your ear off. I can be quite quiet. Believe it or not. And I was. Mom tapped the outside door once or twice to let Mateo know she was still there. I was quiet, sitting beside him at the small yellow table with 2 chairs. Eventually, Mateo began to draw, because there was the art medium, a big heart. I did not prompt him. The heart was lopsided and a bit squiggly, but Mateo drew with intensity. His heart took up the entire page. Then he grabbed up crayons and furiously colored his drawing red, then orange, then yellow, and partially black. Around the edge, he colored the bluest of the blues from that crayon box. When he was done, he was done. I said what I usually say to little ones when they draw. Tell me about your picture. He said nothing but rolled his eyes as if to say, "It's a heart, you dummy." And he did do that. I smiled, then turned the paper over. Now, I don't always do this, but I did do it in this case because something hit me, and I have had a lot of training. Since Mateo could only print the letters of his first name, he was 5, I asked if he wanted me to write anything else before he signed his name. Without a blink of hesitation, he said, "Write, to my mom. I am very sorry I could not save you. I will never leave you again. I love you." And then he printed M-A-T-E-O. We gave that picture to his mom, who casually stopped by to see me at the Red Cross place the next day. "Hi, Carolina," I said. "Do you want me to see Mateo again?" "No," she answered. "He's at school." The end. So something happened for that boy that did not have really much to do with me, except I gave him the opportunity. So now, did you take little pieces of paper? And if not, I have some. And if you're going to cry or do anything, go ahead.
Hand out paper if anybody wants some.
I have some in my purse, too.
You don't have to do it.
Yes, they have to.
Oh, they do?
Yes, they have to do this. You do not have to share this. I'm going to ask you to do this little tiny thing. And remember, it's not art. You aren't going to be judged. You can make a stick something. You can just make a line and call it whatever you want to call it. This has happened for me in art therapy classes a million times, and it is very insightful, just to us. Is everyone ready?
I got a few more things to hand out here.
Thank you. Here, hon. I'll take this one. Thank you, Eileen. It's only going to take a minute. So the prompt is, when you're ready, draw yourself as an animal. Any animal. An animal. Any animal. Think of you, think of an animal. That's all you do. Doesn't have to be beautiful. You don't have to do anything if you can't. And whoever doesn't do it is going to fail.
sure.
I'm sorry, DJ. This is harder than it sounds. And now, if anybody would like to share, I would love to hear it. But you don't have to, we're not gonna compare. I just want you, yes, Ariana.
Drawing ourselves as an animal?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And again, this is not about the drawing. Is there anyone brave enough to say what they put down? You don't have to. Yes, Lynn.
Okay. I drew myself as an otter, a sea otter,
Okay.
and I'm having a, what is it, abalone for lunch? And I'm floating contentedly in these wonderful waters with kelp all around me. I didn't get the kelp on there, but that's my envision of it. Yeah.
And does it feel right to you that when you draw that, you think, yeah, this is me?
Well, yeah, and I also recognize something else, is that when we draw water, it frequently expresses, depending on how you are in the water, you know, are you drowning, or are you sinking, or are you floating on top, or that kind of thing. So I'm floating, and it usually means, and then I've come to terms with things that are bothering me in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, Kate.
Mine is a horse, ears pricked forward, mane going back, going forward, bright-eyed, stepping highly, not necessarily on anybody or anything,
Okay.
but tail up and fluffed and just content, but still pushing forward.
Great. Ooh. What do you think when you look at it? Does it represent anything to you in terms of, this kind of is me?
Strength.
Strength. I would say you're a very strong woman. Now in therapy, I wouldn't say that. I would go, oh, there you go. All right, anybody else? Eileen, yes.
I drew a very fuzzy four-legged animal, and what strikes me is the fuzziness, you know. I don't know where to go with it, but the fuzziness is really important too.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now, it's not any particular animal, correct?
It's a four-legged animal,
Okay,
and it starts out looking like a lion,
but now
big
it's,
mane,
uh-huh,
and then it just disappears into
fuzzy.
fuzziness.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mary?
I drew a deer,
Mm.
but it had spots on it, so it's a little deer, child deer. And it has wings, and it's flying up in the sky.
Mm.
Um, And since I was a child, the deer was like my I don't know. But
Live in the right place.
Very good, Lori. Yeah.
So here I am. And I don't know why I thought to put pond dots on it, and I've always wanted to fly. I love thinking about flying and freedom.
That's beautiful. I really want to emphasize again that this is about you. So maybe you look at it again later, or you rip it up. But it might even bring more things up for you. The first time I ever did this, years ago, I drew a mouse. And it was this little in the corner of the paper, and it stunned me. I was like, but I was like that. And I still have some mousiness, as you wouldn't know, but it was definitely there. I wouldn't draw that now, but it changed over time. It surprised me when that happened, because she just said, just take a minute, do something. And that's what came to me. Anybody else? Lori?
I drew a quail. I love them. They're in community all the time. They kind of watch out for each other. They're little bobbing. They're just
Adorable.
They're adorable. And I love how they're independent, but they're also group oriented, and how they kind of bounce around.
And can
I'm
you
kinda
see
like
yourself?
that.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm kind of like that.
Great, beautiful. Anybody else? Ariana?
I did an eagle.
Whoa.
A what?
An eagle.
An eagle.
Want to talk about it a second?
Happened to be gold.
Golden.
For me, it just feels like strength and freedom.
Okay, great.
And Robin said they eat quail.
There you go.
So you know which person to avoid.
We're not doing group therapy. Thank you all very much. If you do have any questions, great. I don't want to take this too much farther because it can get a little bit to something, and that's not where we're going. You ended it on the perfect note. Thank you so much.
Wait a minute.
Yes, yes.
Can I share one experience from when I was working in the hospital? We treated Vietnam vets a lot. And one of the things that I would do with them is have them draw the road of your life. And everybody started with 6 feet of paper. And this vet started, he stuck to the exact 6 foot. Many of the patients there would come back for more. And they would keep adding, so I forgot about this part, and they would add that in. So he put the 6 feet out this way, horizontally. The first half a foot was his life from birth until he was 18. The next part of the paper went all the way to the other side for the last 6 inches on that side. That was Vietnam. From 18 to 20. And the last 6 inches were the years from Vietnam to where he was at that point in his life.
Thank you, Lynn. So
right away, you can tell the impact. Those 2.5 years he was in Vietnam subsumed everything else in his life. Even the birth of his daughter, his marriage, his career, that kind of thing. So yes, art therapy can teach you. And he had never thought about that. And he just looked at that and looked at that and looked at that. And then for the first time in 10 years, he cried. So
thank you.
It's great stuff.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for coming again. Please take a cookie and finish up the coffee. And yeah,